So yeah, my name's Peter Barnes. I'm a project and account manager at Scotland Excel, and I'm here today with my colleague Lisa Cairns, who's just sat at the front there. And we're going to be talking to you today a bit about Scotland Excel, who we are, what we do, and then we're going to give you some guidance around the tender activity and some steps that we can help you prepare for the tenders that we advertise. So I attend a lot of these events for Meet the Buyer, which are brilliant. I'm really glad you're here today. It's all about just making it more accessible and breaking down any barriers to entry for our frameworks. So if I'm using any terms that people don't understand, please put your hand up. I'll try to avoid any jargons and avoid any acronyms. And I just want to talk to you about where we fit within public sector, the types of frameworks that we're involved with, and how you can get onto some of those frameworks. So before I start, it'd just be useful to know, by show of hands, who's heard of Scotland Excel? Okay, so fair few in the audience. And who is actually working with us already on one of our arrangements? Excellent, so a few people. So I'll try and tailor what I talk about today to that. To start with, I'll give you a bit of an overview of where we sit. So we're a public sector body. We're not for profit, and we work within public sector specifically for local authorities. And I'll give you a bit of an overview. We use the term shared service, and by that we mean each local authority have a procurement team, and there will be a number of buyers within all those local authorities. And we work very closely with those local authorities as a shared service to bring all those buyers together, to bring all the requirements of those local authorities together. There's 32 local authorities in Scotland, so we work on behalf of those 32 local authorities, and we put together requirements to simplify that tender process. So if you are awarded onto one of our frameworks, you have access to the 32 local authorities buyers. We're governed by those local authorities, so any specifications, any requirements that come from those local authorities, they ultimately get the sign-off in terms of what we put together, so it's fit for purpose for people to use. And then they'll be able to call off those particular frameworks that we manage, so you can buy the goods and services that you're supplying. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on the structure, but I'm always asked this on the stand, and I've been involved with public sector for about 4 years now, and this is probably one of the things that took me longest to get my head around, coming from private sector. And it really is quite straightforward. There's three categories: category A, B, and C. Category A is across all of public sector, and Scottish Government, who you heard talk just before, they will look after arrangements that might be applicable to not only local authorities, but would be applicable to the NHS, other public sector bodies like the police. So category A is across all of public sector. Category B then becomes sector specific. So a local authority is a sector. There's also universities, there's also the NHS. So there's different bodies that look after those sectors, and Scotland Excel is the centre of excellence for the local authorities. And you'll see other organisations here today: APUC, which look after the universities and colleges, and NSS, which look after the NHS. So we fit predominantly in the category B section of those contracts. Category C is then at the local level, so you might be dealing with a particular local authority like Aberdeen City Council, for example, and they might have a very unique local requirement that you would want to be awarded onto a category C contract to provide that category C requirement. They also can group together on a regional basis, so the Aberdeen Shared Service with Aberdeenshire and Highland have a C1 arrangement, which is basically the three councils working together to advertise an arrangement across the three councils. I could talk all day about this, but it really isn't that interesting. That gets you where the structure is. Come and chat to us. We're on the Scotland Excel stand today, which is just off the main entrance in the headline partners. and we can talk to you about the structure and a bit more about that. What I want to talk about today is why we exist, really, and its benefits to you as suppliers, and that's what we're here today to talk about. There's 32 local authorities in Scotland. It would be a lot of administrative burden if every time you want to provide a good or a service that you have to do it 32 times. So we try to simplify that process and collaborate with all those local authorities. And Lisa's here today, and she's going to talk to you a bit more about what a Scotland Excel tender looks like. The phrases I always get confused with are frameworks and contracts, and I use them interchangeably still. Supplier Development Programme are here today. They do some excellent training all about that, and Gillian highlighted the different training things that are coming up in October and November. I'd really recommend going on some of those training things that just give you a bit more background to what these things mean. A framework is basically an overarching arrangement. So if you're awarded onto a framework, you've been vetted, you've been approved, all the 32 local authorities can use that arrangement. They would then have their own contract with you to buy those goods or services, but the terms and conditions of that contract are bundled in with the wider framework arrangement. So when we deal with Scotland Excel, we're dealing with frameworks to give you access to all the local authorities. I forgot to mention, as well as the local authorities being our members, we also have around 160 associate members. And these are organisations such as a housing association, a leisure association, a university that join our membership because they're associated with the local authority, and that enables them to use our framework services and the other things that we do. So you get access as a supplier to the associate members and to the local authorities. Some of the other things that are a benefit, so if you're on a framework, I often hear people talk to me and say, well, we don't want to provide our particular good or service across the whole of Scotland. And that's quite understandable. You know, we have different sizes of suppliers across all our frameworks, and we have a lotting structure that allows you to look at particular regions. So the lots might be different regions of Scotland. Different frameworks have different lotting structures. We will give you as much detail as possible on what that looks like in the public information notice, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But it's just giving you that good overview of the different types of arrangement you can get involved with. 70% of our suppliers are small to medium-sized businesses. We're really proud of that. We work with all the local authorities and the elected members to grow the local region's economy. Because we are a public sector organisation, we're not for profit and we're transparent. So we're trying to do the best for every region and make sure there's no barriers to working with us. Talked about access to the customer base, efficiencies both on supplier side, not having to do something 32 times, but also we can free up resource with the buyers in the local authorities so they can focus on the contract management, they can focus on opportunities that they need to work on, and then use the overarching frameworks that have already been put in place. So, good slide that I always use is where to start. Well, great that you're all here today. These events really are a great way of understanding the different parts of public sector and the different organisations involved. PCS, you've heard this phrase, it's already been talked about. There's a stand here today about PCS. Public Contracts Scotland is where everything to do with public contracts is posted. And it has a registration process and it has an alert system. So if you're not on PCS, I would strongly advise you to go and visit the stand today in the headline partners area, register an account, which is free, and try and keep your details up to date as possible, because then you'll get notified of what opportunities are coming up. And we talk about the PCS PIN notices, and these are notices that give you detail of what's coming up for a particular opportunity. On our stand, we've got a list of all our tender opportunities, and you'll see dates when the information notice is published, which is normally a few months ahead of when the actual tender takes place. That will give you lots of detail up front before getting involved with a tender. So Lisa's going to talk to you a bit more around PCS and the structure of a tender. And I think from last year, I think we gave this overview, which was helpful, but I know a number of you here would benefit from some additional guidance on what a tender looks like and how to structure that. So Lisa's very experienced, a lot more knowledgeable than me on the tender activity. So she's going to talk to you a little bit more detail about that.
Good morning, I think we're still good morning everyone. I'm Lisa Cairns, I'm one of the Principal Procurement Specialists at Scotland Excel. As my colleague Peter was saying, we always get asked about the different parts of a tender process, kind of the notices that get published, and so I'm hopefully going to break some of that down for you a little bit today. The first part that we will publish will be a prior information notice. So this is us coming out to the market up to 12 months before we'll publish a tender opportunity. And this is us alerting the market that we have an opportunity for a specific area or a specific commodity. This is your first alert, and it's the first engagement piece where we want to speak to the market. Frameworks and things can last up to 4 years, DPSs and things longer, but a lot can change in 4 years. We are procurement people, we get our technical knowledge from the councils telling us what the requirements are, but we learn a lot from the market, and that market engagement is really important for us to understand what you can actually provide to our customers. So that prior information notice is your first opportunity for going, oh, Scotland Excel are coming out for this opportunity. You'll have an option on the PCS system to express your interest, and if you express your interest in any notice, that the system will automatically send you an alert when there's a follow-up bit of information that's been published, and that might be we provide more information on the notice, or it'll then be that we've then published the contract notice to tell you that the alert is live. But if you express your interest, that automatically gets you that alert. The second notice that we have is a contract notice, and this is us telling you the tender opportunity is live. This is your time to bid. So this is the bit that you've been waiting for. All of the contract notice entails all of the details about all the requirements. If there's any specific specification requirements, qualifications, licenses, or anything that you must hold to be eligible for award to that framework, that will all be stipulated in your contract notice. So that's the first bit that tells you this is what you need to have to be eligible for award there. So please read that carefully. That's all in there, and within the later parts of the tender process, you'll declare that you do meet those requirements, and then you provide evidence at a further stage as well. One key point just around that is these notices are published on Public Contract Scotland. The contract notice is us telling you that the tender is now live, but you will find the tender documents on PCS tender. So the contract notice will have a link and have the details that direct you to PCS tender and where you will find those actual documents to complete. The final notice that we will publish is a contract award notice, and that's us telling the market and declaring to the market, this is who we have awarded to this opportunity. Anyone that participates in the tender exercise themselves, you will know before the contract award notice is published. So there's a process in terms of everyone that participates, you will find out the outcome, but the contract award notice is the public notice that advises the rest of the market, and that's a public document that anyone can see who's awarded onto any particular exercise. We talk about different procurement arrangements, if you like, frameworks, flexible frameworks, DPS arrangements. I'm going to touch on a very high level here today, so but I know that SDP have a lot of good material on this as well. But please come and speak to us as well if there's anything you would like me to go on more about. At Scotland Excel, probably about 90% of the arrangements that we utilise are framework arrangements, and so my next slides focus on that. The key things being it's a maximum of 4 years, but that period can be anything. It can be 3+1, 2+2, everything in between. To participate in a framework, so be on a framework, you must participate in the tender exercise. So when that tender opportunity is out, if you wish to be part of a framework, you must participate in that tender exercise. If you miss it by a day, a week, a month, there's no opportunity for you to join that until that framework then comes back up for renewal. I will slightly caveat that without going into any detail around company restructures and company buying each other over and everything else. There's a process that deals with all of that. But if you would like to participate in a framework, you must bid in the tender exercise. And if you don't bid in that, you cannot join a framework. Another point just for PCS, when you're bidding as well, we can't see your bid. So when you bid and you put your bid up on the system, there's a published closing date and time. Make sure it's in by that closing date time. We close it. It's always 12 noon, not sure why, on a specified date. Your bid must be in before 12 noon. Please don't leave it to the last minute if we cannot accept late bids. But we cannot see what's entailed in your bid as well. So we'll see that Peter Barnes Limited has submitted an offer. We cannot see the content of it, and we get asked that as well. We don't want to put it up too soon because people will see we don't see any of the content. We just see that someone has submitted an offer. Flexible frameworks we utilise mainly in our social care area. By nature, in principle, they're very much like a framework, same kind of lot and structure. They can be split up as well. But by their nature, they are flexible. So there will be specified periods where they reopen. And so if you miss the tender opportunity for a flexible procurement exercise, there will be another opportunity to bid at a future time. And what that time is, whether it's 6 months, whether it's a year, will all be published in the details for that tender exercise. DPS, my colleague at the Scottish Government, Stefano, he commented on some of the DPS that they run. So a DPS arrangement is basically a qualification section. There's no technical data captured, there's no commercial data captured, and the local authorities would have to run a mini competition to award to any supplier. While it's got an initial period that you can bid to be on the DPS, it will then go live, and it then opens again, and it's then opened again for its lifetime. And DPSs tend to be for a longer period as well. Frameworks are restricted to 4 years. DPSs can be as up to 10 years, whatever is suitable for it. A few other bits of information there, but I won't go into too much because I've already got too much to say beyond my time, so I'm going to skip past that. For the focus of this bit, we're going to talk about frameworks that makes up, it's the most common that we have. So within the framework, there's 3 key sections. There's a qualification section, a technical section, and a commercial section. And when you bid on a framework, you have to complete those 3 sections, and that makes up what we call a compliant bid. You must submit a compliant bid to be considered. If one of these sections are missing, it's a non-compliant bid and you can't be taken any further. And I'm now going to delve into a little bit of the details within each of those sections. So the qualification section is dealt with through the single procurement document. Your profile in PCS can also pre-populate some of these, so some of your organisation details and things like that, and it saves you a little bit of time every time you bid that you don't have to necessarily put that information in. The one thing we would say is please keep that up to date, and please, when the pre-populated cells, just please make sure that you double check it and it is accurate for the information that's provided. There's multiple areas within the SPD document. The first part of it is we are trying to establish how your bid is made up. So we're understanding in your tender details, who are you? Are you bidding as an independent organisation? Are you bidding as a consortium? Are you bidding with subcontractors? Do you meet the criteria on your own? Do you rely on the capabilities of your other parties to meet the requirements? So all of that is disclosed in your SPD return. It then goes on to kind of mandatory and discretionary exclusion grounds. They're quite self-explanatory. And then it goes on to consider things like the economic and financial standing, terms and conditions, the insurance requirements, conflicts of interest and these things. All of those details are in your contract notice, as we said, and within the SPD, this is where you're declaring that you meet these requirements and that you have the necessary requirements that we have asked for. So your SPD is really closely linked to your contract notice, so please keep that in mind when you're filling in your documents. Technical section, so this is where you will select the lots. So our frameworks are, I'm pretty sure all of our frameworks are multi-lot. I don't think we've got a single lot framework. So there's opportunities for there, and we're asked all the time, do we have to bid in every lot? No, you don't. You can have a look at it, and if you fit in one lot, if you fit in 2 lots, if you fit in all lots, it's completely up to yourself. You as an organisation can look at the documentation and go, right, and you can bid for one, some or all. There's no penalty, there's no anything for not doing it. It's purely down to you as an organisation and what your requirements and what you've got to offer our customers and the local authorities. Everything that's in the technical envelope is evaluated against the published criteria. So within the tender documentation, we will tell you the score for every question, we'll tell you how we're going to evaluate it and how we're going to determine what your score will be. So that's all in the documentation that's published. And within it, we're basically asking you within the technical section, there'll be a series of questions, be them scored, non-scored, and we're basically asking you for whatever the commodity is, tell us how you will deliver that, tell us how you will, or what you've got to offer for the councils. The one thing I will say for the technical envelope is, please respond as if you have never worked with Scotland Excel or the local authorities before. We can only score you on the details that are submitted in that tender. You might be an organisation we've worked with for 10, 15 years, and we know that you can do X, Y, or Z. If you don't state that in your tender return, you do not get the credit for it. Even though we know you can do it, we can't give you the points for it. So respond in your technical envelope as if you've never worked with us before, because that's where you're going to get scored. And that's fair. It's all about fair and transparency. And if you're an organisation that's coming to work for us for the first time, you want the same opportunities with someone that has maybe worked with us for 10 years. So it wouldn't be fair if we gave them, oh, we know they can do that. Well, that wouldn't be fair and transparent. So that's the reason for it. The other key point in your technical envelope for us is about your ability to service. It's one of the decision factors that we take in when we look at how many suppliers we can award onto a framework. There's no ability to service is not scored. It's literally a yes, no against each of the council areas. You might be able to work with one council area, you might be able to work with all 32 or anything in between. It's for awareness for us and for the councils, but it's also because it's a decision-making factor in how many suppliers we award. You cannot change that once the framework is live. So if you're successfully awarded and in 2 years' time you go, oh, we've now opened a branch in Aberdeen City, can we now service that area? You can't change it. So if you know you're going to do that, declare it in your bid at the point to say, we can't service Aberdeen City right now, but we will be able to. We're going to open a branch in a year's time and we can do it there. If it's in your tender return, it can be considered, but you can't change that at a later stage. Commercial, all about the pricing. It's about the rates, it's about the discounts, anything like that. And for each tender, we'll present that to you in a different way, how we ask you to price for things. Key things, pay attention to the commercial model that's described in the documents. We use many different models for different things, be it scenario analysis, be it we'll evaluate line by line, be it we want you to price a basket of goods as we call it. So be aware of what that is. And also that commercial approach can be different per lot. So the lots are structured specifically for what that entails. So the commercial approach can also be different in different lots as well. So just be aware of that and understand what's involved in that. Again, be aware the documentation will detail how we will deal with, say, blank entries or no offer entries or anything like that. So be aware of how that would impact your bid and things as well. There might also be questions around things like fixed pricing and things like that we would put in. One key point, and I should have made it red instead of yellow, we tend to have a commercial spreadsheet that you download, update with all your rates, and then you re-upload it back into the system. If I say it is devastating when we open a tender return and it's the blank spreadsheet that has been uploaded, you get no further opportunity to submit that to us, and that means you're no longer capable and you've went through all the effort to bid in this tender and you upload a blank template with your pricing and that's it, you're out. There's no opportunity for you to then participate. You can't send that to us after the closing date and time of the tender. I'm sure it's more devastating for you guys when it happens than it is for us, but it's the dread and it's the fear we get. It's one of the first things we check, and honestly it's devastating when you open it because you know how much effort someone's went into to actually bid in it in the first place. So all your attachments, please make sure and give yourself plenty of time, review it and make sure that it is your completed documents that you attach, because your commercial spreadsheets and that is not something you can change at a later stage. What can you prepare up front? So there's a few things. Obviously, the contents of any tender will not be disclosed to you before that tender opportunity is published. There's a few things, so things like your PCS and PCST profiles. I've put there, please make sure your company name exactly matches company house. It sounds so silly when I say this. I mean, if you're in company's house, if you have dots, dashes, brackets, anything of the like, that must be exactly the company name that you put in your documentation for us. It's really helpful. We know people have a lot of like trading as names and all these kind of things, but it's really helpful for us if your PCS and your PCST profile are all exactly as your company your company name is on company's house. When we come to publish the contract award notice for all the successful suppliers that have been awarded, your PCST account has to have that company's house address name on it. So if it's not already there, we're going to come chasing you at a later stage and asking you to update it so that we can include you on the award notice. Insurance documents, all of our tenders, there'll be an element of the insurance levels and everything else. What those are will be detailed within your contract notice as well. You'll declare you have them in the SPD. We will come and ask for them at a further stage. So be aware of your levels, be aware of the basis, and be aware of where your documents are, because we will be coming to ask for them at some point, so have them handy. We also include ISO certificates, so it's either an ISO certificate or a company policy, they're the equivalent. Again, you'll declare that you have them, so this is for quality management, environmental management, health and safety. They are in every tender that we do. Have them updated. They have to be a regularly updated document. So if it's last dated 10 years ago, review them, get them up to date, because at some point we're going to come and ask you for a copy of them. That was a very quick whistle-stop tour of everything that's involved, but it's the kind of common questions that we do get asked by everyone of what's in a tender and how it gets made up and what's structured. As Peter says, we're on the stand, the Scotland Excel stand at the entrance, so I don't know if we've got time for questions, but anything like that, then please. Yeah, so if there's any questions just now, we can take a couple of questions, and if not, we're on the stand. Please come and talk to us, and we can help you. And please, all of what we've covered around that tender process, SDP also have some really good material that covers all of this as well. So please, if it's helpful, go and have a look, and you'll find some on there as well. Thank you.